Well, hello, good evening, and welcome to the Feelgood Portugal show on a Saturday night at 10 o'clock Portuguese time with me, Mr. M, and...
Me, Mrs. M.
Hello. Hi, everybody. Thanks,
Can
everyone.
I change my name just so people also know my name is Louisa?
Oh, okay. Be like that. Is it this first little bit of conflict this evening, is it?
Not the last.
Okay. Good evening, Mode, who's here from Kuwait tonight. I love your comments, Mode. How are you doing? How's your process going for coming here to Portugal? We do need our sound executive producers. Deagle might be able to help with that. Is everything sounding and looking okay, Deagle? It's always more complicated when Mrs. M's here on the screen. And we have a guest as well. So, good night, Louisa and Carl. How are your Christmas preparations going? Light up Christmas! Come back to that. It's not been much like that today. It's been a funny old day in Casamance. And Bonoit, we'll talk more about that later. And in fact, we'll have more of an hour of lighting up Christmas. I had hoped to tee up the show this evening, do excuse me, with Terence Austin's podcast. And I'll do that in the second hour. So we'll have a chat with Dr. Mick in this first hour. We're catching up where we left off back in March 2020. So we'll be talking about our main theme tonight. Is this the future? Because we didn't know, kind of, what it would be like looking from March 2020 when I first spoke to Dr. Mick, and we're having a catch up tonight to really talk about, is this the future you envisaged? No one's got a crystal. Well, some people have got crystal balls. In fact, Mrs. M literally has got a crystal ball.
Two.
Why do I say things like that?
I have no idea. You set yourself up.
Some people do have crystal balls, and some people, call the future and so on. But I think this has come as a massive surprise to most people, the situation we're in. And that would include people who've moved to Portugal for their retirement and to be expats. And where do we go from here? So, what are you doing? She's disappeared into her crystal ball, everybody. All right, stop larking about. Try and be professional, if you don't mind. Okay, Kirsten's here as well from Arizona. Fantastic. Great to have you here, Kirsten. It's easier, isn't it, for people in the States to join us on a Saturday night. Jackie Grant is here. Also known as Jacqueline CDM, I believe. Bonoit neighbor.
Seriously? Oh, Bonoit.
I think so.
Really?
She might just be wanting to use a pseudonym tonight because there are certain things she may wish to say.
Well, in that case, we shouldn't really reveal who people are.
That's why I said possibly.
I got really told off once when I said, I've got such and such in the house, and didn't use their pseudonym. They weren't very happy with me.
Oh, that's very unprofessional. Benoit from Oregon. After all I've taught you, Desiree Tournier is here. Desiree, great to see you here. Thanks for being here this evening. You wanted to respond to that, didn't you? I
was just going to ask again that same question I've asked a couple of times. How do people get those really cute little S's?
I see. Bless you, Desiree. You've become a member. Thank you for drawing my attention to that. Yeah, a YouTube member. It has that special insignia. The sort you might want emblazoned across your chest, right?
Yeah, to
me, they're superheroes.
It almost looks like a Superman.
It does. They are. That's what they're like. Well done, Desiree. Thank you for that. I didn't even notice, and I'm sorry I didn't. Bonoit from Leaf and Susan as well over there in the States. The Kings, fantastic, and Eric's here from Mexico as well. Bonoit desde Mexico as well. Lisa M. Botar Noit from very good. That's always good. We're never sure. We're still not sure after 4 years. Whether it's right to say tarde or noite. And I think, what usually happens, if you say it as a foreigner to a Portuguese person, they just say the opposite.
I think it's noite when it's actually dark.
You say that. I will go for that.
That's what I got from our babysitter.
Technically, yes, but people will still say the opposite to me, it turns out, just to fox me. Good evening, Fox. Good evening from Belfast, from Peter Stewart. Brilliant. Peter, thank you for joining us from Belfast. Jay as well, enjoying our email conversation. Jay and Diane, looking forward to meeting you. Sorry it wasn't such a great day in the Bay when you turned up the other day. Ooh, Cindy B, who is in the Bay as well. Cindy B, I want to introduce you to Desiree, who's here. Perhaps you could talk to each other in the chat tonight. Love the music. It is really laid back and groovy, but it has to be muted every time because it's some sort of copyright infringement, as it turns out. So enjoy it while it lasts. Bonoit, Louisa and Carl, you say, Cindy B. Great to have you back. And let's meet up soon. As soon as you feel ready, let's do that. Yes, sounding clear. Executive producer McKillen says, if Louisa leaves, don't turn off. Just set headphones on table. He's good, isn't he?
I'm ready. Like,
he's
when
very,
the kid's cool, I will take it off.
Susan Taxi are here as well. Here for a few minutes. Good morning from, you can read that.
I don't think I can.
All right. I will go with Sarajaravi. in Finland.
Really?
How did I do there, Suze? Try that again. Good evening, everybody. Jay and Diane here. Gemini Bradshaw's here as well. So I watched Love Actually last night. I wonder what he was going to say here. The movie there. I watched Love Actually last night. Part of the film has a Portuguese part. Of course it does, because he takes a Portuguese lover, doesn't he? If that's the right way phrased. That sounds
takes a lover. It sounds really
very Victorian, isn't it?
It does.
What's wrong with me? It's been a long time since I've done anything like that. You'll be glad to know. I watched Love Actually last night. Part of the film has a Portuguese part. That's I think it's Colin Firth's Portuguese lover. And can you imagine being Colin Firth, being all shy and Bridget.
Sorry, Sandra.
And yes, and a lovely Latin lady comes into your life, and you're just like, I was able to close my eyes and understand most of what she said. That's fantastic. We've got to watch that wonderful. Again.
Yeah,
I would watch a Richard Curtis film just to see that. Very good and very beneficial. Portugal, indeed. And Nuno is here as well. Nuno from Winsurance. Good evening, everyone. How are you? And click the thumb if you. He's very good, isn't he?
You're amazing.
He is our producer.
You were looking for an executive producer, weren't you?
There he is. He stepped in. Benoit from Pittsburgh, from Suzanne as well. Suzanne's here. Good evening to you, Suzanne. Lovely to have you. Benoit from Mark as well in Norfolk in the UK. Wow. Warren Charm. I did it in Portuguese. He keeps coming up trumping with these tunes. Warren,
that's your man. The music.
Yeah, I can't thank you enough. And we will play I Did It in Portuguese.
I asked Carl earlier if if you could.
She's got a request.
If I could write some lyrics, would you do the music to it? As I was kind of going through the potential lyrics in my head, I was kind of delivering it kind of in the style of you. And then Carl said, "You don't need him to do it. So watch this space."
In an awkward position. I don't want to overload you, Warren. I mean, you've been so giving to us.
You really have. It's amazing.
Yeah, no, as usual, autocorrect strikes. We know that, Suzanne. We better bring Dr. Mick on because he's getting twitchy in the background. I don't blame him. I mean, if we keep going on, he'll just drop off in the backstage there. Bon dia todos from Ubium as well, who joined us.
That's an amazing name.
It is a great name, isn't it? Which I never pronounced correctly, I'm sure. We have got Dr. Mick. I'm just keeping him on his toes. Let's bring him onto the screen now. Our friend, Dr. Mick Stephenson. Mick, how are you?
Hey, Mick.
Good evening. Good evening.
Great to have you with us. And it was, of course, March 2020 when we last spoke properly on the show. And you're one of the very first visitors onto the show to talk about the situation. Can you explain to our lovely listeners here your professional background, which will give a little bit of context as to why we invited you on early in the pandemic venture last year?
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, Carl, it's so much has changed as well, just in terms of, I think it was April 2020, wasn't it, when we first talked?
March, yeah.
And it's December something or other 21 now. So
yes.
Where did that go? So okay, so my background is mental health, obviously. I've been in and around issues to do with mental health for many years now, really. I went from mental health nursing into psychotherapy. I'm still a registered nurse, but I went into psychotherapy. I actually signed up for the course. How fortuitous is this, given some of the things we've talked about? I actually signed up for the course on September the 11th, 2001.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, so I remember driving to sign up for my master's degree course and in CBT, cognitive behavioural therapy, and as I was driving to the university, it was I remember listening to there was the reports of the first attack on the Twin Towers and then the subsequent attack. So I got involved with cognitive behavioural psychotherapy, often just called CBP or CBT, around 2001. And I kind of drifted into trauma therapy around about 2004, 2005. And what I mean by that, really, there's lots of different kind of angles to trauma therapy. A lot of people associate trauma therapy with childhood traumas or those type of issues. And I've never, that's never been my my thing, really. Although I've got a huge amount of respect for the therapists who work in that area, I've not really ever been involved with that area. I've really been involved with single trauma. So things around, say, for example, lots to do with car crashes, motorcycle accidents, industrial accidents. So I've got involved with the kind of the psychological healing, if I put it that way, for people, for patients that have been in some sort of, usually a single trauma. That's not to say that they don't come with, being humans. There could be other incidences in their life that they bring to the mix, funny enough. So it's sometimes you tread a path between dealing with, say, somebody who's been in say some quite horrific car crash, for example, who subsequent to starting therapy with you will maybe tell you that they witnessed somebody die 10 years earlier. Does that make sense? So you have to kind of, you've got to kind of negotiate the two, although for the people that I tend to work for as case management companies who really want you to deal with the issue, the presenting trauma. So that's what I've really done. Pretty much I've done bits and bobs of other things, but really since 2004 that's been my main focus. So working fairly independently, and some other, like I say, some other bits and bobs I've done as well. I did my doctorate, finished my doctorate in 2018, so I did that kind of over 7 or 8 years.
I've got a quick favour to ask you. Your headset, I think, is rubbing on your zip or your top. So if that could be sorted out, that'd be awesome.
It would be incredibly clever as well.
If you just hold it out away from your jumper, that'll be absolutely fine.
I'll stick something on it, or I'll find a solution. Just tell me if it carries on. I'm using a tin of sour grass at the moment to hold it at bay. There you go.
Excellent product placement there, Mick. Nice one. Expect a crate from the company this Christmas to go with your celebrations.
Can I check? When you're on the call with Carl back in March 2020, were you living in England? Is that still the case, or are you in Portugal? Because I noticed it looks like you've got a heater on the top of your wall. Is that so? I'm thinking you're in Portugal.
Is this CSI Feelgood Portugal? She's good, isn't she?
And you've got
one more thing.
Not too many air conditions where you're back in the UK. No. So what happened was we bought. Me and my wife were talking about this the other day actually, and again it's something about time, isn't it? You're like, when did we actually get the house over here? Was it 2018, 2017, 2019? And it's crazy that you have to. We're not talking about days or months here. It's what year was it? So I think it was April 2018 we got the house over. I think that's right. And then we
were actually here when you spoke with Carl then?
No, because we were using it as a kind of a holiday. It was here with the intention of using it or coming over at some point more permanently. And then I was talking to Carl earlier, we kind of took the plunge last September. So that would have been, 15 months ago, something like that, 14, 15 months ago. So yeah, we've been permanently here just outside of, and somebody's going to tell me about this pronunciation, Alviasra.
It's actually
you're not far away from us then, really.
Yeah, Alviagra, I think is the correct pronunciation.
So yeah, I mean,
just joking.
But I mean, we've been kind of coming to Portugal for, like, I think most people really. When you don't suddenly think, well, pin the place on the map and move there. I mean, had become very familiar with Portugal, and I think it was just a natural progression really. And it's like most people, we started with the Algarve and kind of worked our way north.
Yeah, good move.
But yes,
well, that was it. That's how we got talking, wasn't it? Because you had an interest both in Portugal that we shared and made you an ideal candidate for Good Morning Portugal. But with your experience and professional expertise, I was thinking at the time, okay, this is going to be quite challenging for people on two levels. It's challenging for everybody facing this new situation for humanity, but an extra level of complexity for new expats in Portugal. And that's why it was really helpful to talk to you. And we went at it from a very positive point of view, I think. And I remember one really great thing you said was some of the best therapy is with your mates and it's informal, and how important it is to have your network and your friendship circle. And I'm sure that has been proven true for many people in this pretty challenging time.
Absolutely, absolutely, Carla. I think therapy, psychotherapy of whatever discipline, whatever the arrangement might be, I think is something you move to when you really need to. And I think, yeah, absolutely, being with your friends. I was saying to you earlier, one of the things we've invested in over here, and when I mean invested, I don't mean financially. I mean an emotional investment was buying a dog. We got hold of. We went about a month ago to a local rescue centre, and we picked up an old girl. She's 6 years old, but but it's been brilliant. It's been brilliant. We brought a cat over from England, so that's an interesting experience. Them two getting on together, but they're still sorting out the pecking order.
It's cat.
Yeah, cat's going to win.
It's the cat. It's the cat. I mean, she's a big. The dog's she's a big old dog, but the cat won't back down. But just literally having animals, having that extra dimension helps. And I think it helps. And like I say, your friends. There's lots of therapy which is informal, which is primarily the place I think you need to go before you go. I'm not going to say no one ever needs formal psychotherapy or clinical therapy. Clearly, I'd be talking myself out of work, but I think there's a lot of places you can go before you get to the point of talking to a therapist.
Yeah.
Dr. Mick, I've got a question for you because is that your cat or your dog in the background?
I have. It's probably the dog. I don't know. I can't.
That's not the question I was going to ask you. But it's interesting you're saying like the first place to really go to is to be with your friends. Obviously, that's something that expats may struggle with. I mean, I think we're all quite a friendly bunch, but you don't necessarily have the same longevity, do you, as you would have with your pals back home. But you do have a sort of like binding experience being expats all together. So I think, the community that Carl has created with Expats Portugal is a way of helping people feel quite bonded. But what strikes me the most about this last couple of years is that friends and family have been warring, haven't they? They've been kind of pitted against each other quite purposefully, I think. I'm not going to get too controversial, hopefully, but quite purposefully from the media.
Too late.
And governments, saying, when you can see people, when you can't see them, that you've got to be frightened of killing grandma, and all these very, very strong images. And then, there's vaccinated people don't want to be with unvaccinated people and vice versa, all sorts of different things. So presumably in your line of work, you'll be called upon a little bit more during these times. That wasn't really a question, more a statement, actually.
There was a lot in there.
It wasn't. I wouldn't get on very well in court there, would I? I'd be like thrown out. But
let's just say one thing. What I would say. Well, let's just say for a start, let's think about the friends thing, and again the people being divided by space and time and whatever.
Yeah.
One of the things, and I know this isn't quite the answer to your question, but I think it's just worth popping in there anyway. Is one of the things that one of the things we did say is that building up the friendships over here, which is no doubt been hampered by. Particularly, we came straight here as a lockdown was occurring, essentially. So all the places that we'd kind of planned to visit and all the connections we planned to make really was pretty much cramped for quite a long time. It's got a bit easier recently, but one of the things we did say very deliberately is, yes, we'd like to build up friendships over here, but not at the expense of the friendships we got back in the UK. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't going to be a competition about one replacing one with the other. And I know this is a bit of a cliche in itself, but I honestly don't think, Louise, there are many ways that I still talk to friends. I mean, whether it's Zoom or whatever it is. I mean, my best friend is WhatsApp videos, and they're just brilliant in that sense. But I still keep those conversations going with the people. It's a strange thing with the friends we've kept back in the UK. Distance doesn't seem to be so. The people that wouldn't have kept contact if we'd moved, because we're from Leicester. So I think the people that wouldn't have kept in contact if we'd moved from Leicester to Manchester would have made no difference if it was moving over here. Does that make sense? I think it's that kind of thing. But the ones that the ones you kind of find out who your connections are back in the UK, and
that definitely happens. Yeah.
You kind of work out, okay, so the ones that we've maintained firm friends over here, and we'd like to think we've made some kind of nice friends over here, but not one at the expense of the other, really. But not quite the answer to your question. But I'm just saying to you, you can, use the technology. Is it the same as having that face-to-face, skin to skin contact almost? I don't think it is, but it's still, I mean, we couldn't have done this without technology, could we? And so it's there, and I think we need to use it to keep those connections going.
Okay, so and I'd love to explore what else, and personal tactics as well, because
I mean, you attended a funeral. Oh, we attended a funeral, didn't we, via the Zoom
terrible
call?
Yeah, awful.
So I guess we're using the tools we have to, don't we?
Yeah,
sorry.
I'm not. Well, it's certainly better, a whole lot better than nothing, no question about that. And it's we have changed, haven't we, as human beings in this last 18 months, 2 years, with how we've adapted to this. It's been incredible. But what I'm especially interested in tonight as well, above and beyond that, is we have gone from tentatively considering and predicting what the future might be like to actually living the new future. And all these ideas of a new normal and what people might have been expecting. That's what I'd like to draw in from our audience tonight is, I'm sure people's models or visions of their retirement weren't quite like it is at the moment. And that's, I'm talking from a very personal point of view as well. I came to Portugal for a much greater sense of freedom, ironically, which I think is true. Yeah, I think it's true to say one can feel freer in Portugal than you can in my native country, UK. And there we went from feeling in the last few months that things were lifting off to just straight smack down, new restrictions, a Christmas that's going to be affected, home working. And this has an effect on people. It's not, the best way to upset a human is for them not to have their expectations met, right? That's number one, enemy number one of upsets, isn't it? And that's what's going on. So, and I'm not trying to ask you a long-winded question here. It's just to broaden the discussion and invite everybody in. I think that's going on. We can consider and talk about tonight what we do about that now that our expectations have been changed. Should we adapt to this as a way of life? Or is now the time? I mean, is there a psychotherapeutic tool or insight or school of thinking that is encouraging, okay, the old normal's not coming back. We've got to build something new. And do we get on with that now?
Well, when we talk about, the situation, I think we might be seeing this thing slightly different, because I think the situation is more fluid, perhaps. I don't know what the new normal is, because nobody knows what the new normal is. We don't know what it is. What I would say is that one of the real challenges at the moment is too much information coming into our heads. Okay, I think, there are so many different narratives around at the moment, quite frankly, isn't there? Saying, well, this is what's going on, or no, that's going on, and we're living in such highly charged times. No two ways about it. But I do think, and from a psychotherapeutic point of view, I think if you want to keep your anxiety levels manageable, and I really do mean that, because I think, and yes, I am seeing, to answer your earlier question, I'm certainly seeing just more background noise in terms of anxiety now than I've ever seen before. And more specifically, where I say really my daytime job is trauma, but things that you're going to come across anyway, such as we're getting people who are more obsessive compulsive type conditions, which absolutely. Well, I am. I can't speak for the whole industry.
Do you think that's because people are trying to find control in their life?
Absolutely, that's a really interesting point. That's a really interesting perspective, actually. That, yeah, like you say, that if it's, I mean, partly it'd be driven by the whole virus issue. Clearly, that this, wash and wash again. But like you say, Louise, I mean, that's a really interesting perspective. Just the fact that they, if I can't do this, at least I've got to control my home environment, and of course, keeping my family safe. This is one of the narratives that's out there. But what I would say to you is that there is so much information coming at the moment that probably the best thing you can do is, to a degree, maybe limit some of that. So I know people that are constantly checking the figures. The virus. How many people have been have got whatever variant we're on. I don't even know what variant we're on at the moment, but but people are constantly checking the daily data. No, it's getting rather complicated.
A word a week, aren't they?
If I could clarify that, the current variant is the one that has very mild symptoms and isn't very dangerous, as it turns out, despite shutting most of the world down. Just to clarify that.
Okay, but the point is, I think, Carl, as well, that the people I think you need to, obviously, take the virus seriously. We're going to take viruses seriously, number one. Number two, we have to take note of governmental information wherever you are, whether it's in Portugal, UK, wherever you are, the States, or wherever. You've got to, if you're being told, you've got to have a certain awareness of what's going on. Or I'm going to walk into a shop not wearing a mask, for example, and I'm going to get fined or something. So I need to have information. What I'm saying to you is that at the moment we're in a situation of information overload.
Yes.
And from all sides. So if we say, I know this is an extremely kind of simple interpretation of what's going on, but let's say the mainstream medium, the MSN, the mainstream media, let's say they're kind of erring more towards the left, and let's say some of the social media sites are more erring to the right. Does that make sense? So we've got a lot of information. I think to keep your anxieties low, I think whether it's coming in from left out or right, I think you have to be aware of what's going on all sides. I think you've got to listen to some of those narratives, but don't get drowned in those narratives, because this goes back to the thing about what's the new norm? I don't know what the new norm is, but I'm not going to find out what the new norm is from the Sun or the Daily Star. Trust me, I won't get it.
Yes, for our American,
no disrespect to them too.
Well, we know the point you're making, and for our American listeners and viewers, I'm sure they can make their own connection with the type of publication you're talking about. The newspapers are in the business of shocking people, aren't they? Let's not forget that. The best news is bad news. If it bleeds, it leads, is the saying on what used to be Fleet Street. So you can expect they're doing their job.
They're doing their job. I mean, they do what they positivity doesn't sell. Sorry, is this rubbing still, or is it okay, or is it still?
Mainly okay. You gave it a bit
really
of a bash then.
Then.
It's a little bit. There's just, I think, by your left side, a little, your microphone bit on the cable. It's generally okay though.
It's okay. Okay. I'll keep it.
May we? Oh, sorry. Go on.
No, I'm just saying that whether it's the daily this or daily that, or the Telegraph or some. All I'm saying is that no single broadcast or whatever from whoever is going to give you the answer, is it? It's not going to give you an answer. It'll give you a perspective.
Yes.
I saw a great quote actually today where somebody said, if you read or go with, say, I don't know, a newspaper headline, today we're in a pandemic. If you don't read that newspaper headline, today is Saturday.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
So true. Yes.
So I think it's really important to step back from the. I mean, therapy is all about stepping back, getting perspective.
Yeah.
We talk about a helicopter perspective, a helicopter view. Stepping back, trying to make sense of the bigger picture, control the emotionality. And the one thing, Carl, you said about the media, kind of they work on the negativities, if you want, but they also work on emotionality.
Yes.
So it's stepping back, I think, and wherever that information's coming from. And I say, and I'm not putting this down to one side or the other. I mean, we could talk about the more conspiratorial, and I'll say that very loosely, but the conspiratorial angle. We've just got to step back from it all, and I think be aware of these different arguments, because the one of the things we do primarily in life is listen and digest information, and then come out with a definitive response from ourselves, some idea of where we want to go. So we've got to listen to these arguments, but not not let it build up to a point where it's almost obsessive. And I'm seeing it become obsessive, and I think that's a real concern.
And it's hard to spot that, isn't it? I mean, I've had periods in my life, and I've watched channel, what's it called? Breaking news channels, constant news. News streams, and that was quite old-fashioned 10 or 15 years ago, because not only could you still be watching that if you really wanted to, but you can just keep checking in on your Signal, on your Telegraph, on your WhatsApp, on your Facebook and YouTube, and several different subscriptions on YouTube. And the other thing about us humans is we like to affirm ourselves as well, don't we? So we might be looking for certain types of information. And there's no shortage. Any opinion you've got, you can find the necessary information to back it up, can't you? And then it can become a full-time job. So what are the symptoms of obsession with this thing? Because I think I could easily be obsessed with checking for news without thinking that I'm obsessed by it.
Well,
can I also ask, is obsessiveness also somehow related to cognitive dissonance? Because like when you're obsessive about something, it is usually to it's to such an extreme that you can't entertain anything else.
And as in the self-affirmation.
Yeah. And then you lack the awareness maybe to look at other information, and you could suffer from cognitive dissonance. I would actually quite like a definition of cognitive dissonance as well, because
you won't get it from me, Louisa.
Oh, okay.
I'm not going to put my head that high up above the parapet.
Deagle, can we, executive producer, will stick it in the chat.
I mean, also let's not forget confirmation bias, which is where what you're doing essentially is you're constantly reaffirming one side of the argument or other. Now, the way I would interpret, if you take that bias there is a point where that bias will lead to dissonance. That's where I might say where there is a point. So I can talk to people, and I clearly I won't say who these people are, but I can think of people in my immediate environment where you could literally pull out a piece of research which pretty fundamentally disconfirmed. I mean, research is always dodgy. We understand this, but something which would actually say, I don't know. This something really, really contrasts what you've been saying, and that person, or else I can think of a few actually, but where the shutters will come down immediately. There's no entertaining that other perspective, and this is dangerous. This is dangerous on a personal level, and it's dangerous on a societal level. It's not good for us to not entertain, debate is great. This is the point of, this is why we want to do this. Debate is what it's about, and it's and I know people are vaxxed, I know people that are unvaxxed, I know people that are this, some people are that. Great. This is how, have these discussions about your positions and whatever, because this is good. Now the dissonance comes when you only really jump into one camp or the other, and then you just look for that reaffirming of your position. So one of the things I would say to you is be careful about the amount of data you've got coming in. Really, I think that's the point. Yeah. Certainly don't filter one side or the other. I think would make sense. So keep an open mind. Keep the debates going. And yeah, I can definitely say, well, who's invited to the Christmas party this year? Which side of the, It's not the way to go. It's not the way to go. Not in my opinion. I'm talking. I think sometimes this is a personal opinion. It's not the way to go on a personal level. I just think we need these discussions, and we need to keep an open mind. What I would say as well, I think is important, is that I think there's a difference between new information and the rehashing of old information. So I think sometimes let's say you work in a particular industry, and because of a particular strain of the virus, for example, that your industry shut down at the moment. Okay, right. So you need to know that, and you need to understand what the guidelines and what you've got to do. But then what you'll get often is information that sounds new, which isn't necessarily new, which is there's been another meeting with regards to what's happening with your particular industry, and the decision has been delayed on what's going to happen in that industry for another 2 months. Now, that's not information. That's not new information. Does that make sense? You're not actually gleaning anything new. So do you see my point? So what happens often is all you're listening to is a rehashing, if you want, of, and we'll make a decision, or this has been delayed, so I think it's really important to keep up with what's happening, but not all the interval stuff, all this stuff which says there'll be some more stuff along shortly, and then you get more stuff which is actually about, which may be just the rumor mill, essentially saying that something else is going to happen. Well, in actual fact, that's not new information. It's not going to move you on. In fact, particularly if that information is, how shall we say, quite hopeful, that, but in 3 weeks' time, this may happen. Well, what happens if this doesn't happen? It's going to drag you down.
And so conversely, there's clearly from the bottom to the top across every spectrum of society, people who are using this to their advantage, which might include people who don't want to put events on. So I can imagine there are people who are thinking, oh, my Christmas is really busy this year. I've got to do this, that, and the other. And then lockdown, not lockdown, but restrictions go, phew, that's good. I don't have to take responsibility for that anymore. I just say it's all been closed because of this, that, or the other. And of course that's happening, isn't it, among us human beings? That's what we're like.
Every situation, Carl, it doesn't matter what it is. There's always winners, and there's always there's always people profiteering. I'm not necessarily making but people. There's always winners and losers in any calamity. And calamity is interesting because that's what we're in at the moment, isn't it?
I was explaining earlier on. I was having a conversation with somebody about calamity. And it is lost in translation because, it's not exactly calamitous, is it? It's just, it is. I would say, if you were to sort of put it in English, rather than a translation, which is probably where that's come from, it's like it's a situation of great concern, but that's hardly a calamity. Just for anybody who is confused about the state of calamity idea, this is a government at the moment in Portugal where there is concern and observation of what's going on is how I would see it, and they've put some restrictions in place to suit their level of concern, I would say. Yeah. So let's go to a few comments and see what people are saying.
We've got some amazing comments.
I'm sure we have. We usually do. Sorry to have kept you so long, everybody. Eric is saying, don't worry too much. In Austria, several officials are already resigning. Perhaps that will create a snowball effect. Well,
yeah, I really hope so. I've been watching that, Eric. Thanks for reminding us about that.
Linda D. Olaf from New Mexico. One day soon I'll say hi from Braga. We can't wait with you on that. That's fantastic. Governments are getting scared. They have just 2 months left to have us give up human rights, says Eric there as well.
Hey, Eric, I'd like to know where your 2 months has come from.
Yeah,
let me know
what's going on in Mexico. Greetings from a new undisclosed location. that sounds really as a man of the moment. You haven't seen me. No, we haven't seen you, Raphael. Not your average globetrotter. How are you, mate? It will be okay in the end, and if it's not okay, it's not the end. Nice one,
I love
Eric.
That, yeah.
There you go. There's your new normal. Good evening, people from Lee who may well have something to say on this. Santino, good evening to you, Lee.
Thank you. That was my sneeze, wasn't it?
That was some
Bless
time
you.
ago, isn't it? Yeah, 15 minutes today on Memorize. Well done, Deagle, learning the Portuguese. And let me see if I have got this, just to play the first bit. Won't play the whole thing.
I did it in the Portuguese.
We will come back to that. I did it in Portuguese. Who else can say that today? Evening, everyone. We'll catch up. That's Warren, who's here earlier on. I hope you're still here, Warren, to hear that. And we'll play the whole thing later. Don't worry. Evening, everyone from Fiona. We'll watch the full show and catch up. Keep lighting life up. Oh, we don't need much encouragement, but thank you for that. Hello and good evening, people from Claude Greengrass.
What a great name.
Excellent name. Pretty good pronunciation, except that the J sounds like a Y in Finland. So do children say J instead of Y? Y?
In Dutch, it's and I might get shouted down for this, but it's a lange I, like a long I.
Ooh.
No. I mean, I've got a Flemish grandmother, so she used to say lange I.
I'm sure there's a cream you can get for that. So Sarajärvi is like Sarajärvi. J being my favourite letter. This is unfortunate. You don't get to say it. Oh, here he is. Happy to do that. Oh, look at this.
Oh, wow.
In an intercontinental collaboration, kind of like a geographical left brain, right brain. He's on the same page, isn't he?
I don't actually know if I'm a good lyricist, but thank you anyway, Warren.
It'll be astrological and maybe and possibly astronomical. BBC via NPR had Lucia Moniz on during their piece about Lisboa last week. She was our Portuguese Dulcinea to see Firths. Oh, Colin Firth. Okay, so you had your very own Portuguese Dulcinea, whatever he was in love. Actually, he would have been in. Colin Firth is Colin Firth in everything he ever does, isn't he? Sorry. So, Bridget. So, where is the Alviagra place? So, central Portugal. Alviagra. I'm only kidding. It doesn't wear thin on me, but I'm sure it does for the likes of.
I think for people living in Alviagra, they probably don't like you calling it Alviagra.
For the upstanding citizens of Alviagra.
Carl likes to do silly word plays, and my parents live in a place that has the name Camellia in the name, and he calls it chlamydia.
Do you know, I'd only just met them, and Louisa said to them, guess what Carl calls your address? Chlamydia Close. And their faces just would stay deadpan and quite unimpressed.
So pay no attention to Carl saying Alviagra.
Young lad on MasterChef, Daniel from Portugal. He's stunning and into the semi-final. I hope he wins. That's great. We've got to feature that on the morning show. My grief counsellor passed away last, but he was so good at his job that I don't miss his counselling sessions.
Well, that's important. That's really good, isn't it? Love. Yeah, but I mean, no, that is the whole point of coaching and counselling, is that people don't need you and they don't miss you.
Yeah, he's not missing his grief counsellor.
But actually, grief, even though it's a good joke, grief, I think, would be the thing that's coming up at the moment for most people. Like the grief of the lost expectations. A bit like, when you break up with somebody and you have to grieve the future that you were expecting to have. Yep,
absolutely. Yep, I get you. My new normal is currently 100% off news and social media. It's been great. There's someone taking your advice there, Dr. Mick.
That's fantastic.
Carl, our grandparents lived through World War I, World War II for 5 years. Life changed, adopted, and they came out looking at things differently. Well, I'd like to know about those everyday stories of people, because what we've been taught, the history of the so-called Great Wars, is probably a version very different to what you might hear from everyday people. And I would really love to hear from, but from both sides as well, the everyday people rather than the grand historical narratives. I think it's probably really important at the moment.
Yeah.
But a good point, Deagle. Yes, expectations. I find I always have to manage them. And your line of work, I'm sure.
What is Desiree?
Oh, sorry, I read that as Deagle's comment there. But yes, is that your own you're talking about there, Desiree? Do tell us more, please. Simon, I need some glasses. They're so expensive in Portugal. Cars and spectacles.
Are they?
Yes.
Oh.
That's not the reason why I'm not getting them. I believe it is too soon to call. What is the new normal, really? Well said, Susan. And I think, it's right what Dr. Mick's saying. It's work in progress, isn't it? And we never really knew either, did we? And what was so great about before, it had its shortcomings, didn't it? Linda and I have moved into the retirement stage during this period. That was helpful in that we knew things would change. Okay, a concurrent transformation going on there. Interesting, Warren. So all bets were off in a way anyway. Carl, we continue to adopt to a new normal, be it health economy or IT. If we stayed still, we'd be cracking to bits of flint 2 bits of flint to get heat. Yeah, it's true. It's true. It's as though I'm sort of being characterized as the guy here who wants the old normal back. I'm not sure I do. I was always moaning. I was always moaning about the old normal, wasn't I? I think.
No, I think you're actually very like what's in your present is the new normal, and then it changes as quite fast. I think you're actually quite relaxed to create new routines and things.
Yeah, it's true, and that I think.
But people won't get that from
Dr. Mick. Dr. Mick might have something to say about this. I don't. A lot of personality traits that are seen as positive are things that have been developed as a way of managing difficulties, aren't they? Our personality development is a way of surviving often, and it can be used. It can be overused. So my spontaneity, which I think is a personality trait that's come from my childhood as a way of surviving, means that I can be over spontaneous or too lacking in detail. And that's the sort of thing I'm talking about. As I get into my older age, I really like the idea of living in Portugal for the rest of my life, and creating a family homestead here. And I'm uncertain, in some ways. And I don't want to sound dramatic, but a bit of a red line for me is the mandatory vaccination as a general principle for humanity. I don't personally, this is a personal opinion, I don't see that as a right thing to do to a population or to people. And it would change my view drastically of Portugal if that were to happen here. And that's what I'm talking about.
It would change your view of any country, wouldn't it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But if this country that I love and live in did it, I would be quite shocked, and that would be, like I say, a red line for me. And I think that's an interesting phrase that's getting used by more and more people. What their red lines are. It's helped us define those sorts of things, isn't it?
There's a couple of really interesting points there. Can I just the thing about being optimistic or these kind of characterological traits that we have? Personal view on this, I think, would be. We may have talked about this one previously, Carl. I cannot quite remember, but I find optimists tend to suffer worse in times like this than the pessimist. Okay, you see it in trauma as well. So if I'm working with somebody who's had a very traumatic time in their lives, and their background is really controlled their lives well, been very positive about their lives, would say that they've got their act together. You often find after a trauma, the optimist will actually struggle more than the person that comes to me with actually quite a pessimistic outlook on life and who's had lots of hardships, because they're inured to the whole idea that life is inherently difficult and there will be these challenges every day, really. So there is, I don't think there's much, and again, this is only an experiential kind of point of view, but I don't actually feel when you're working therapeutic with somebody who is a optimist per se, that you're actually going to make more progress than you will with somebody who's pessimistic, because the pessimistic will have a completely, they've already seen life as kind of, they've already got their baseline of what they expect. So in actual fact, anything that does get better will get better. So what I'm saying is any improvement they'll be happy with. Now, I'm not saying that's the right way to live, but in this situation that we're all living through at the moment, people like yourself or people that have come here to retire and saying, oh, I'm really pessimistic, I'm optimistic, or I have been optimistic about the future, will struggle more than people that say something was going to go belly up, because something always goes belly up. And they tend to survive better. The other thing I point out is this thing about red lines. Humans have got this habit of drawing red lines. And let's take the example of the let's say the partner who has maybe an abusive partner. I mean, again, it's not my area, but I've been around nearly 60 years old. I've seen enough in my time to understand some of these issues. But let's say you've got a partner who is living with a mean or quite aggressive or dismissive or abusive partner. And this partner comes in at 2 o'clock in the morning, and this person maybe comes into therapy, and they say, look, I've had enough of this person coming in at 2 o'clock in the morning, spending all our money down the pub and whatever. So they say, look, this is the red line. You know, you've got to change. When we've got to, you're not carrying on like this. You know, you've got to start coming in, you know, a bit more early or whatever. So the person maybe behaves themselves for a week or two, and then they start transgressing again. So the red line now goes back to 2:30 in the morning, and then the red line goes back to 3 o'clock. So what you find often is when people red lines, we often overwrite our own red lines. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah.
We're
because
very
there's
good
other information becomes available.
Well, confrontation. It's a confrontational thing, isn't it, as well? Or we've got so much invested. Crikey, the social investment model, something I used to have a lot of dealings with years ago. So the social investment model works actually quite well with the situation here in Portugal for expats. And what I mean by that is social investment is this theory that the longer you're in Portugal, Carl or Louisa, the longer you're here, the more you're invested in terms of friends, in terms of money put into the local community, financial. You know, you buy a car. What was the first thing we did here? We bought a car, and you know, so you accrue a certain amount of physical goods and connections and emotional ties. So you're building every single day. You're building new things into this relationship. So it becomes increasingly difficult then to back out of that situation. Okay, this is where dissonance comes in. If you've smoked cigarettes for 40 years and you've poured an awful lot of money into cigarettes over the last 40 years. I'm not anti-smoking per se. I mean, I did smoke up until a few years ago myself. But what I'm saying to you, I'll try to give an example of where if you've spent a lot of time, you know, you've smoked, you might have enjoyed your cigarettes, but you've done that for many, many years. If somebody actually comes up and goes, hey, after 40 years, this is really bad for your health, and you start thinking about how much you've invested into smoking, it's a pretty hard gig to turn around and actually then disinvest from something that you've actually put a lot of money into. Does that make sense? It's not the best example. Marriages and relationships are the best examples, really. Where
and migration
20 or 30 years.
Yeah. Also, I think like one of the premises of, or like one of the functions of the unconscious mind is to keep us safe, and when we consider a new way of thinking, it often feels very unsafe. So we're also likely to persuade ourselves that what we've decided to do was the right thing to do. So like when we've taken action, we tend to stick to what we've decided to do for that very reason. Because if we admit to ourselves we might have been fooled, then at some level we have to consider that we might have been fooled, conned, hoodwinked, that we might have been silly, that we might have been gullible. And a lot of people are, you know, it's not something that people are very happy to do, is to consider that, you know, that they may have made a mistake. And I think that holds a lot of people back. I quite like recognizing where I've made a mistake in my thinking, because I don't really see it as a mistake. I just see it as part of life. But when you're talking about pessimists and optimists, I mean, you're having a conversation with two massive optimists here. So
Good.
And you are right. You are right, because like we go up and then we go down and then we go up again. But like, you know, we're able to get ourselves up, and we're able to persuade ourselves, you know, so that we know that, you know, it was right to be optimistic all the time. We're able to get ourselves up quite a bit.
The thing is, when you talk about you like to kind of, you know, catch yourself when you know, this where if you're on the wrong road or you've done something, you know,
it's part of the journey, isn't it?
The problem, it is, but you've got to catch it early.
Oh yeah,
because if you don't catch it early, then that becomes a mindset. And then what I'm saying to you is, say for example, for every one person that says, well, look, you know, if they bring in you know, this requirement or mandatory requirements, I'm off. There's a lot of people that will redraw that line.
Of course.
Oh yeah,
Because,
I mean, you're right. Like if you don't cut something off, like, you know, if you let it continue, it becomes a mindset. I mean, I was in a relationship for 11 years, but I
You redrew the boundary.
There were some red flags really early on, and when I look back, I know to follow my instinct about red flags now. You know, I had red flags going in my head, these like silent little whispers saying, that doesn't feel quite right. And I chose to turn them off. I very consciously ignored them and distracted myself.
We do,
and I
Louisa.
did that for years. And I could have saved myself 10 years. And it's quite shocking when you think like that. Like when you realise, you know, what you've done.
Louisa, how old were you at the? I mean, what age?
I was
how old
20,
were you when you got
20
involved, and
to
when did you?
I was 20.
So at 20, it's very hard to work out what part of your body is up and what part of your body is down. Let anything more
That's
complicated
true,
with relationships. So I think, and don't forget, I think as well, we often, particularly in those early, we've come to a completely different area, haven't we? But I think there's also, with regards to those situations, we often run out of childhood into relationships rather than we go to relationships because they're a good place to be. We're moving away from.
No.
We're moving away from. I'm not saying everybody has an unhappy childhood, but we're trying to we're trying to go somewhere where we feel wanted, where we feel we are now an adult. So I think we move swiftly into relationships for technical reasons, almost, or emotion, but we're not really there often for the. This is why then marriages or relationships then fail after X amount of time.
You're right.
Yeah.
We're going there. We're under the. We assume that these two people meet and they fall in love and they go into this relationship and blah blah blah. Love actually, but in actual fact, I think it's actually it's something we operationalize. It's something we do to get out of where we are.
Yes.
Which is interesting when you think about moving to Portugal, isn't it?
I was just about to say.
It does make you think how many people are going over, say, from the UK to Portugal, really because they're moving away from something rather than necessarily. It's not. Yeah, exactly. It's all getting a bit subjective, but. Yeah, I think there's something in that.
I think it's a great point.
It's a really important point. It's a really important point, and that's not to say people should or shouldn't do that, but it is a it's an intelligent question.
It's not a condemnation of people moving to Portugal, or Spain or Italy or whatever. It's what I'm saying is that we are often in life, and I think it's like you were saying, Louisa. It's because we work from a vulnerability. We work from a point of vulnerability in our lives. I have this thing. I rarely meet what I would class as very confident people. I might have said this to you before, Carl, I can't remember, but I think pure confidence, or people who would say, people who are really confident in themselves, I think is extremely rare. So I think it's a rare phenomenon. Now, there's a lot of people that say they're confident in themselves, but I think it's a rare thing. So I think that we are threat-based creatures generally. So what I mean by that is if somebody walks down past you in the street and they smile, for example, or they smile and they nod, but they don't say hello to you, you're more likely to remember the fact they didn't say hello to you than the fact that they nodded and they smiled. Does this do you see my point? Because, well, the reason being...
It happened to me tonight, Nick. And I am the living proof of that. Because I couldn't quite work it out. I saw this guy shutting his gate, and I said, "Hola, boa noite," and I had my dogs with me, and I was thinking, I went through this whole thing in my head, like he can see I'm okay because I've got dogs with me. I said hello to him. I looked back and I smiled at him, and he didn't say hello to me. What's wrong with that? And
did you think what's wrong with him or what's wrong with me?
Yeah, I said, I was thinking, I was trying to make excuses for him in my own head. I was thinking, maybe he's not Portuguese, and that's why when I spoke Portuguese to him, he didn't. And I was excusing him. But that is the theory you've just proposed, isn't it?
Well, there's a reason.
I would be wondering what I've done wrong.
Right. So there's the answer. I remember I was doing a lecture many years ago, and this actually came up during a lecture, and we had this kind of group, chat about it with the students. And one of the students said one of the most insightful things. It was a really great thing, actually. They said, well, in actual fact, because we're threat-based creatures, there's no threat in somebody smiling, but not saying hello actually represents a threat. So as a human being, you're going to lock onto the negative because we are threat-based creatures.
Yeah, I thought he should have said hello, and he didn't. And I
So-
was trying to. I wasn't making him wrong. I just thought the situation was off.
No, and also,
I was reading this.
But the other thing to also remember in CBT, we talk about mind reading as a cognitive trait. And mind reading is where you sit there, Carl, going, I wonder what he's thinking about or what I'm thinking. And if he's thinking what I'm thinking about what he's thinking, then he's thinking, and we play these horrible moves. We do it a lot. We do it a lot. So, and again, kind of going back to the subject in terms of where are we, what's the future? We're doing this on a big scale at the moment. We're doing this, all this information coming in. We're trying to double guess. We're getting information from all sides. It's getting some control back over what's going on in our minds at the moment. And I say it's so important, I think, to just understand that. You know, I've written this down. Susan King said this is not the new normal. We don't know yet, and that is right. It's not that we don't know yet. We don't know yet.
She's a smart lady, Susan. We know this, and Dr. Mick. I mean, you've been very generous with your time. We've had over an hour of it, and just wondered if you have a parting. I mean, I'm not trying to hurry you.
You're welcome to stay longer.
And but if you've got things that are left unsaid or things further guidance or insight you'd like to add, for this misstep, is how I would sort of characterize it. It's like, well, it should be over by now, is one of my expectations, and it isn't quite like I imagined my new life in Portugal to be with all this going on. How does one make an adjustment to that?
The only thing I would say to you is, and I'm going to give you a different closing statement if you want, Carl, because this is what I would say. Is in these really highly charged times, and like I said, I'm nearly 60 years old. We've lived through a lot, haven't we? But this is the most highly charged times I can remember. I think. I mean, we could possibly say the Cold War, when we all thought we might be annihilated by a nuclear exchange at any given moment, would be up there somewhere. But I think. Sorry.
That would have been quick.
Yeah. That would have been quick. Yeah.
This is endless.
What I would say to you, well, because it's endless, what I would say to you, if you've got friends or family or something and they are showing concern and they're starting to, what is happening, don't give bland reassurance. Don't just say to them, it's all right, it'll be fine. It's, the thing to do is let that person explain or express what they feel, and maybe ask them to just kind of guide you through how they got there with their thinking. Does that make sense? Just how did you get there with that? How show me you're working out, and then just give them a little bit of a space, bit of time, and see if we talk about Socratic, just kind of let them kind of head to where they need to go with that conversation. And it might be that, for a lot of people, they don't actually want you to give them an answer anyway. They don't even want to hear all they want to do is go, I'm really wound up about things at the moment. And I was saying to you, Carl, earlier that, we had a guy at the petrol station venting yesterday, where just out of nowhere, this guy was just at the petrol pump, and a conversation struck up for absolutely nowhere, and he just wanted to get it out, because he was just the whole the situation where it started off with a discussion about the mask, or the mask. It sounds like a Jim Carrey film, doesn't it? But but it's no good me saying to somebody, say, oh, it's all right, it'll be fine. Bland reassurance actually is a very it's what we call a safety behavior. In other words, it will relieve somebody's anxiety maybe for a nanosecond, and in actual fact it will make them worse quite often. Does that make sense? It's fine. So somebody says it's fine.
I always think comments like that really disconfirm what people are saying. In my experience, like when people use those techniques with me, I feel like they're not interested.
They're
just trying to shut me up.
Yeah,
I think a lot of people just want to be heard or witnessed sometimes. I think it's really powerful as well if you create space for somebody to just let them breathe.
And if I dare mention, sorry, Carl, I was going to say, if you dare mention the kind of agenda thing here as well, I think often as well, men will want to fix the problems for their partner, whereas often the partner won't you know,
Come on, stop it, Mick.
No, it's funny, Mick. You're like bang
the
on with
women
money
just
there.
want to be, they just,
Can't
you
do
know,
anything.
want to
Do you
be
know what
heard. They
people-
just want to, but men have got this thing about fixing.
Fixing.
They'd
Yeah.
love to fix the situation with the pandemic. They'd love to fix it.
Yeah.
And then when their partner turns around and says, you know, I can't carry on, blah, blah, blah. But it's very easy to go into that male role of, you know, no, I'll fix it for you. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. But that's not what sometimes your partner wants to hear. It's actually just let me get this out. And again, let that person work through what it is. And then don't give them their conclusions. Don't do the working out for somebody or trying to force that ending into that math, you know, that's that reasoning. Just let that person run with it.
Dr. Mick,
perhaps to reflect on that.
It feels like you've been listening into some of our conversations.
It does. My two best tools have been destroyed in the last year. Don't worry your pretty little head about it. I can't say that anymore. And don't worry, I'll fix this. You know, actually, you know what you should do about this is. I can't say anything anymore.
What I've actually started to say to Carl is, look, I want to share something with you, and I'm asking you not to try and fix it. I just want to be heard. Yeah. And bless him. Then he sits down and he listens. But like, you know,
well, that's a threat to his masculinity, Louisa. That's the trouble. It's a threat to his masculinity.
Yeah. I mean, but bless him, he does it. You know, he listens. But it's taken a while, and I will ask him if he wants to talk. I'll ask him how he wants me to listen. Like, does he want ideas or does he just want to?
Really good. And again, that's something you can use in this pandemic situation is actually saying, well, what do you want? But I mean, rather than warring families, we don't need warring families. What we need is people talking to each other. Okay. And you know, there is, get away from absolutes. Life is not about absolutes. Okay. It's a continuum.
Oh, well said, Mick. Well said.
Okay, so it's working through.
Yeah,
you've shared some real gems with us tonight. Really appreciate it. Why don't you stick around, because there may well be some responses. Or would you like to say goodbye to us now, Benoit?
As long as I can get a beer top up, I'll just sit there and just let you crack on and just
Well, it might be good.
I have a feeling some people are going to be saying yes, Dr. Mick.
I know we'd like to hear that. Thank you. Like to hear that. And if they say the opposite, we'll shield you from it.
Please do. I've got a very thin skin.
Yes, me too, believe it or not. So there we go. There was Susan's comment. I believe it's too soon to call. What is the
absolutely, absolutely right. Bear in mind, World War II lasted 6+ years.
Yes,
you know,
indeed.
It's a long. This is a long road, and it does feel like wartime circumstances. I feel that very strongly.
Yeah.
And actually, you know, when you were talking about pessimists and optimists, I was saying about ups and downs, you said something else, and I was thinking, yes. And have you noticed that like we're given permissions and then they're taken away, then we're given permissions and taken away, and the reason I say that is I think the way things have been announced have almost been to disempower people, because when we're told we can do things and then have it taken away, it puts us in a state of confusion and makes it very, very difficult for us to plan. And also, we now have this idea that we are granted freedom and granted permissions rather than we have them anyway as human beings. So some really interesting sort of distinctions.
It's the same as the newspapers. I mean, we know what the media's job is, and
it's to stir things up, isn't it?
Well, it is. You know, they're looking for the bad news and the ultimate bad news stories, and this is a great time for the newspapers to be sensationalizing and frightening people. No question.
I quite
the job
like
of governments and public health is not an easy one.
Yeah.
The clue is in government. The word government includes govern, and that is the expectation put upon
and meant, which is mind, govern mind.
Well, perhaps, but
control the civil mind.
Yeah, well, that's a little deeper than I was actually going to go. But I was going to, you know, we elect governments to govern us, so in the broadest possible terms, and then that's what they'll do. I mean, I don't know why people are so surprised about that. And public health is a real broad brush issue. It doesn't take into account individuals. You have to kind of take care of that for yourself, don't you?
Sorry, this is a little off topic, but I was watching. I quite like JP Sears, the comedian on YouTube, and he did this classic JP Sears. His latest one, he said it's funny, in the 1970s and 1980s we knew, like, we used to watch the WWE or WWF,
World Wrestling F, yeah.
That's the Worldwide Animal Fund, isn't it? The WWF or something. Yes. I can't remember, but we used to watch like the WW whatever it is, the wrestling, and we all knew it was made up, but they didn't admit it. But in the 90s, all of a sudden, the wrestling came out and said, oh, and by the way, yeah, it's all made up. And we're all like, oh, we knew that anyway. It's all cool. And then JP Sears made this comment and saying, well, I wonder how long it will be before the mainstream media make the same announcement. Because, like, you know, I actually can't help but I read something that came into Carl's inbox earlier, which was some Portuguese news about the latest variant that, you know, I don't want to name on the screen or anything. And it was saying there was this calamitous type thing. The numbers were huge. And then it went describing a lot of information. And I had to actually read through for about 5 minutes to actually get to the bit that included any detail about this apparent new variant. And all the big numbers and all the big spiel was actually about previous stuff. And I actually sent it on to Carl. You know, I resent it to him with this little thing saying, look, this is the only bit that relates to the title, and the rest is all made up.
I couldn't understand the concern. I just thought, I shorthanded it to newsmakers are being sensational.
Yeah.
Oh.
But like
right.
people really do take the news as being true. And actually, I think we're living in the time of realizing that news is actually a business and it's an entertainment.
Let's poll our intelligent audience here. I mean, come on, guys. We know that it's a
I'm going to let my hair down. Excuse me.
It's a oh, literally.
Yeah, I'm going to let it down.
Right. Okay. I think it goes quiet when I do that. I need to put Mrs. M back on the screen. That you were going to have a transformational changing period at this time, and COVID came along at the same time. But you also add, but wow, we weren't ready for this. You say, how's it going for you? I disagree. I went into a shop. Well, this is going back a bit now in the conversation, but no mask, no one said a word to keep anxiety levels down. Just ignore the mainstream news and ignore the dictates. They are designed to keep you afraid, says DJ. Remember hearing this bit of advice years ago as Northern Ireland moved into a peace process. Go laugh in the places you cried in. That is profound, isn't it? Quite extraordinary. And that will be, I mean, that part of the world, you know, there is a lot to learn, isn't there, from Northern Ireland and the transformational process that I think is continuing, right? Last year, I didn't know anyone who contracted COVID. Now, the only people I know who have had it are people who have been double jabbed. The unjabbed people I know have remained COVID-free. Says DJ there. Ubi ominum. Tweeter I follow gives some good perspective that is helpful for me to keep things in perspective. That's going to follow, I'm sure. Claude Greengrass, good encouraging counsel and exemplary advice. I'm glad you stayed.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, he's taking his headphones up just as we told him that bit. We'll remind him of that when he comes back. Keep helicopter view is important, in my opinion. Try to see the facts, not only proof of your own opinion.
Yes.
Eric, that's absolutely right, mate. A great point. I heard that in Germany, you can now not go to a euthanasia clinic unless you have had this state injectable first. You can't make this up. It's like a Monty Python sketch.
Yeah. So if you want to end your life,
before you end
you have to take something that they're calling a life-saving medical treatment to be able to then end your life.
That's probably to keep a certain integrity in the record keeping. Observe, listen, then remember to remain objective. Thank you, Fiona, for that. And I know that's what you endeavour to do. A bit extreme, perhaps, but he's largely addressing what?
I have no idea what that
I
means.
don't know what that means.
Could you let us know, UB?
Yeah, hi. And I was thinking it looks like one of those names. If you read it out, you've been pranked. So
let's have a look.
Hi from Madeira, says Wales Safe. Hi there, Dr. Mick. Are you putting your headphones back in? You took them out just as somebody said.
Sorry, I'm sorry. I was just going for a quick top up, and
but it was good, encouraging counsel and exemplary advice, Dr. M. There, how about that?
Oh, bless you, Claude. Thank you very much. I was thinking as well. Louisa's having a bit of a JP Sears moment as well with her hair down as well.
Letting my hair down.
Yeah, exactly. So you know the man.
I have. I've often referred to him. I've said it's like you're my brother. From another mother, and he's never got back to me. Funnily enough, he's a bit like stalker.
He would not be around if it wasn't for the explosion in social media. He's one of the great. He's one of the great. He's one of the great champions. He's come from as far as I know, he's come from the roots upwards, as it were. So, which is brilliant.
Yeah. Yes, the media does a lot of speculation. This could happen, that could happen, and they do a whole article of that. But it isn't facts, information. That's how it rolls now, isn't it? I mean, where is the journalism in the sense that anyone knew it from?
There isn't any.
Dickens this time. It usually has a fairly panicked tone as well. Yeah, I mean, that's what it's come down to, right?
I mean, actually, what we really need is to listen to our grandparents. You know, like when I was growing up, I always used to go around to my nan's, and it was my nan that I wanted to talk to when I had concerns, because and Carl talks about, you know, like we need these elders who can say, come on, let's sit down, let's have a slice of cake, and we just talk normally, and
well, let me come back to that
without doing too much there, you know, and it's all going to be okay, but they actually listen. And we need that. It's a skill set that very few seem to have at the moment.
Hold that thought, because we're going back to 1041 in the comments here.
Oh, okay.
But certainly the role of the elders and what you said about going from childhood to relationships is very interesting, that I'd like to pick up on, Dr. Mick. Finally, this will carry on. Finally, that's ominous, says TJ there. This is all I have to say on the matter. This will carry on until the CBDC, the central bank digital currencies, are introduced. So the name of the show is this the future? Here's a prediction from DJ. That's why diktats seem so confusing. They're not based on logic. It's about controlling hyperinflation, according to
I think that's an interesting point, because
can I just read a few?
Oh yeah, sorry.
If you comment on every comment, it kind of takes a bit. It takes quite a while.
Yeah.
I know you're excited about this particular subject.
Before we say any more, can I just clarify?
She's going to do it anyway, folks.
No, just in light of Dr. Mick's conversation point about me.
Don't bring Mick into it.
No, JP Sears, and that, you know, I'm getting my JP Sears on. I just want to let you all know that I'm not naked. Because like he does most of his shows
naked, isn't he? Yeah.
He's always showing off his body, and that's something I don't do.
Okay, all right. Could be encouraged, possibly. I don't know. Hola todo from Kevin Cavan there. Thank you very much, Kevin. Went to the DJ. You said finally, and that you're having another word. Went to the doctor the other day. He said, you've got a very serious illness. I said, I want a second opinion. He said, all right, you're ugly as well. Boom! That you're allowed that second go there. Tamara Madeline, get rid of your expectations is key, isn't it? Just DJ, my 18-year-old daughter got COVID last July. That sent her to the hospital because it attacked her ear. She was unvaxxed. It's a bit of anecdotal challenge there for you, DJ. Daily media is like I'm sorry to hear that, Tamara. Don't mean to gloss over that. I hope she's okay now. Yeah,
fully.
Daily media is like a repeating film reel, nothing new, just repeating same stories to reinforce and condition the responses mindset of the people depending on agenda. Claude Greengrass, with I think that's a fairly accurate depiction, isn't it, of much of the media. Carl, what you said about Colin Firth is great. It says Ubi, my old lady hates all things Kevin Costner, saying that he always, I think he plays with himself in all his movies. No. The Bodyguard. Kevin Cavan, I left Portugal November 12th. Too cold for me. Where did you go, Kevin? Since the start of the pandemic. The closest, or the closet epidemiologists, okay, seem to be growing in number on social media. Bearders22 is saying, hello, Bearders. To quote Ian Lavender, Pike in Dad's Army, can I be an expert captive Mandarin? Shut up, Pike. Terence Austin, we're going to play your podcast in a bit. Have you been waiting all this time for that? I'm so sorry, Terence. Are we all doing too much soul searching and not enough doing? It is a possibility, Terence. Thank you for that point of order there. It's my own. If I'm getting upset, it is often that I expected things to be some way they are not. Thank you, Desiree, for your further explanation here. So I have to back up and think about it and adjust to enjoying the present as it is, as it is, as much as I can. Yeah, well said. I'm not against any vaccines, for your information. I hope I didn't suggest that for one moment.
I don't think we
I'm
did.
just against taking away the freedom to choose. Same here, Eric.
Yeah.
But this is my personal opinion as an ex-military member. Yep, I'm with you on that. Ubi, no, not that anyone hates Colin Firth, but I know she thinks he's fabulous. Although she'll probably chuckle at someone used Costner put down on her darling Colin. Well, yeah, you could say I said that. I love him though. But, I mean, by the way, I think he's a fine actor. I do like what he does, and
I think if we were having a movie of who would play us, I think you'd actually quite like Colin Firth to play you, wouldn't you?
Well, Nicole Kidman and Colin Firth.
I don't know. I'd like a young Nicole Kidman because her face is quite.
So sorry. Yes,
it's quite constructed these days.
It's the Bridget Jones moment, isn't it? Is which, as a man, do you identify more with who's the other
Hugh
fellow?
Grant.
Hugh Grant or Colin Firth? For me, it's Colin Firth every time. I'd rather be, Colin, shy, retiring, gets the girl Colin than big knickers Bridget, whatever his name is. What is he? Hugh Grant. Huge Grant. Hugh. How long before we talk about today? This period has been the good old days.
That's very true. That's very true. That's very true.
Yeah.
We do look. Exactly. We get frozen. Frank Zappa once said, the great Frank Zappa once said that if he said, how long was it before we got nostalgic about the 50s and then the 60s, and how long we will get before? And he says that we'll get to the point where we will get so frozen in time that we'll be kind of basically shedding tears for the last footstep we took. And it's so true. It's we do. There is that thing about we'll look back at this era. Oh, in the good old days when we had lockdowns.
Yeah,
I can see it.
Yeah, I mean, there's been some positives in our household, haven't there? I mean, we've all got closer.
Yeah,
if that was even possible.
Susan Taxi, I just watched 18 episodes on History of Canada. Wow, binge watching the History of Canada. Portuguese got there early, but it ended up a fight between the French and the English, typical, eh? A bit like Channel Ferry, really, I suppose, isn't it? Learned a lot, proud to be a Canadian, but want to become Portuguese. We'll do all we can to help you with that, Suze. I frequent, restos, as in restaurants. Are asking for vaccine certificates, and I happily oblige. The reason for high vaccination in Portugal is because it is not mandated.
Yeah.
Love Portugal, says Tamara there. I tend to be optimistic. Pessimistic. I tend to be pessimistic, says Desiree. Or maybe it's just being realistic. I think pessimists tend to say that, don't they? Yeah. Despite what I said about expectations, mine really aren't that high. Mandates have the opposite effect in voluntary take-up and instead builds up public resistance. I'm sure you're right there. Claude, thank you. I'm running a bit behind. I've just had Khaled coming about his red lines. I totally agree. I imagine that many people in the 1930s in Europe probably felt the same way as tyranny took hold, says DJ.
It's an interesting comparison to 1930s, isn't it?
For sure. Good evening, people. Glad to still be catching at least part of the show. Joao F. Good evening. Joao. And holding up the our great community of Portuguese friends here, a part of that. Not just me then, says Suze. Claude Greengrass, heart there. So much to say on COVID, says Don. The impact is massive. Look at history and how society changed during and post the Spanish flu. Point us in the right direction for that, Don. I am woefully ignorant in that department. I would like to know what is and where is the human race going on the walk with dogs? Don't wink. It's the advice there. Talk to Vic.
Maybe you scared our neighbour.
Smiling, but no winking, because that could be threatening. Tamara, I hope your daughter has recovered. Yeah, we need to know what happened, don't we? There. Aviva's here as well. Good evening to you, Aviva. Fantastic. As I'm listening to your chat echo to me, that often comes down to courage. I mean, courage to say hello, to smile to strangers, to make the first step in a given situation. Yeah, and getting the right balance. I do realize, and you can help maybe Joao F with this, I do smile too much at Portuguese people, I think. I think they think I'm an idiot or
I do think
over smiling.
I mean, the Brits I've always known.
Yeah.
We do all quite smile at each other.
Well, I do. I
smile everywhere I go, but I don't always get smiles returned.
No.
And I think it might be culturally a bit
Constantly offended. All this
Weird.
without hesitating, without fearing other people's reactions. Yeah, cheers, Joao. We take your coaching on that. Impossible to plan anything now. This is a problem, isn't it? I'm not sure that I will be able to move from the US to Europe, or even if I will want to, says Suzanne. Frightening news every day from both US and different EU countries. Well, I don't know what to say, Suzanne, but, you know, it may feel like I'm not going to fix it for you, but, you know, stay tuned.
I mean, what I would say, Suzanne said frightening news every day. And it's like, where is that news coming from? Because, you know, what we've noticed, like, I remember at the start, like in like April, May, June of last year, my family and friends back in the UK thought things were terrible in Portugal. And yet everyone I spoke to, we were living with a Portuguese woman, a Canadian Portuguese woman who had a shop in town, who pretty much knew everybody in town. And she was our lifeline, you know, because she was like working and she refused to close her shop. She was really quite fantastic. And she was just in touch with everyone and their family and their family's friends and this, that, and the other. And, you know, we used to ask her, how many people do you know who are ill? And the answers, like, we've asked lots of people, and you know, our response, you know, the response we got did not match the view that my parents had about what was going on here. So
Yes,
Suzanne, it might be worth asking some people in this,
you know where to stay in touch with us.
You know, we're all happy to share, and it sounds like quite a few people in this community are out and about and have different experiences.
The state of calamity being such a good example. You know, can you imagine being an American
and then hearing
wanting to move to Portugal and hearing that it's gone into the state of calamity again? It's really not as bad as that name might suggest. Aviva, fellow mental health professional, there is a yearning for freedom, and I think people are feeling despondent for what was. I try to encourage people to embrace whatever they can do at this time. You do what you can. That's so important, isn't it?
Yeah.
And she did, thanks to her care. Thanks for your thoughtful comment,
That's
DJ.
good.
There. That's good to know about Tamara, your daughter there. About knowing whether you've made the right decision in life. The truth is, you just never know how life would have been if you had decided differently. Yeah, I guess you got to go with what is, right?
Yeah.
And Eric, like all of us, I think here, Tamara, I do beg your pardon. I'm sure I've asked you this before, but we're all delighted. She's made a good recovery by the sound of it. It'll be fine. Phone a friend, use IT to contact them, send a birthday card, a weekly or daily invite, Feelgood Friday, wear the yogurt bucket, let us laugh. It did. She's actually selling merchandise now. If you want if you want a yogurt bucket used by Jenny B, Don, as the ideal stocking filler, I'm sure we can sort that out for you. Silent and listen.
Yes.
2 words with the same letters. Thanks, Deagle. Aviva, we haven't really acknowledged the deep collective grief yet. Yes,
so I was
we're early
about,
on, aren't
it?
we? We're early on in this, Dr. Mick. People just need space to feel what they can't yet express. And there's a kind of vacuum effect to that, isn't there? So all you can do is to make the most of every single minute of your life, says Joao. Prepare for the worst, different from being pessimistic, and hope for the best. Good strategy. Eric, thanks. It was scary, but she's well now. We are chuffed to hear that. And that's a good thing, by the way, using that English idiom there. Yes, what is meant by being realistic? Thank you. Oh, sorry. No, yes, that is what I mean by being realistic. Well, turning it into a question. Exactly. If it feels like wartime, but it's truly worldwide war, there's no place that is not involved in and controlled by this war. I wonder, Suzanne, you see, I've got this theory about a Second World War that not everybody, let me put this into a deeper perspective. When I was growing up, learning about the Second World War, the clue was in the name world. And there were certainly countries that weren't involved in the war. And there were people, even countries that were involved with the war. There were everyday people going about their business who weren't involved in conflict. And I think the same thing is happening now. There are so
probably
many,
quite a few villages in Portugal.
Untouched by it all.
And like over this last year, I've got like clients dotted around. I've been asking them for little updates, like what's going on in your country. And irrespective of what we're told on the news, that it's a worldwide event, the realities that my customers have been experiencing have all been very, very different. And also they've changed suddenly very differently
at
doing
different
what
times. Don says, isn't it? Keep
it's
in
asking
touch
around.
with people. Check with real people. Exemplary
Definitely.
and elucidative explanations, Mick. Thank you.
Can I just chime in with something? It's just
you can.
Think about the grieving process. We talk about the kind of the Kubler-Ross model of grieving.
Yeah.
You know, there's different versions, but essentially it's the kind of the shock and denial, and there's a period of anger. That's really important. There's a period of anger. The thing about that, though, is it's really a model based on fixed positions. So in other words, the loss of a partner or the loss of, there's no fixed positions with this one.
Yeah,
So you can't go through your grieving process. It's probably closer, and I'm sorry if I'm upsetting anyone here, but it's probably closer to somebody with dementia, where you've got a loss of, there's a slow change in calamitous circumstances. So the grief is spread out over a very long period of time, but there's no closure. And I think the thing is, at the moment, with the whole situation, the pandemic or whatever you want to call it, is that there's no closure, because you can't. The model is a great model. I love the Kubler-Ross model, but it's brilliant for fixed positions. I'm not so sure it works well when the thing is still rolling out.
Well said, Mick. Yeah.
When you said I love the model, I was thinking, what, you like the model of the pandemic?
No, I'm not a big fan.
The 7 stages.
The 7 stages.
Kubler-Ross is brilliant. Kubler-Ross is
Worldwide,
brilliant because you can use it for all kinds. You can use it for anything from grief. You can use it for redundancy. You can use it for all kinds of things. But they are fixed positions. They are. It's a scenario, and then what you do is you attack that scenario. But this one's a rolling scenario, so you can't. So where does the shock end, and when does the denial end, and when does the anger end, and when does resolution come? You can't. We can't.
Are we on this like sort of like bumpy ride, like as we're?
This is what you're doing at the moment.
New one happens, and then another one, and people are just going to think I like doing this, aren't they?
You've done that a few times.
What you're doing at the moment, Louise, if you think about it, you're having little mini grief processes. That's what you're doing. That you and Carl are doing is you're having a series of mini traumas. To really, the whole situation is just a series of mini traumas. So what you're trying to do is rapid cycle that, and it doesn't work.
Well, okay, that's a good takeaway there.
We need to be pessimistic,
and I won't make the dad joke about where there's denial end, although it will be somewhere in Africa. I know what you mean about being realistic. I'm more the optimist, to the point of living in a fantasy world. Well, I can relate to that for sure. I mean, we all make our own worlds up, don't we? I think, to some extent. That is a better approach, or a happier one, from Desiree to DJ there. Well, I spotted it early, Raphael, but thank you for saying that. Silence back, Mrs. M. Yeah.
What? I didn't take myself off the screen.
No, I did. My bad this time.
It was you.
Thanks, Dr. Mick. I think your counsel is grown through real life and experiences, and then refined by textbook knowledge, not the other way around. Very refreshing. This is what I like about
that's
it.
Lovely.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I was about to say, glad Louisa has been with us for the duration. And then there was the only brief lull. Hey, look, Winnie's here with a touche for us tonight.
Hey,
I'm not sure that was about, but Mary, I hope to see you soon. I never have been afraid of this. I'm just getting on with life, says Aviva. Yeah, well done. I am often accused of being a pessimist, when in fact all I do is try foreseeing the most probable situations ahead in order to reduce nasty surprises. Yeah, and you're trying to do that as a service to people, and they're just like, shout, oh, boo, stop being pessimistic. Don, I suggested to a newsagent to replace the newspapers with Ladybird books. It's not bad news. Media sells. Bad news sells, and they need to make money. Did you really do that, Don, or is that a gag? I don't know.
I think that's really cool.
I think he might have actually done that, and I'd love to see the video of that. But that doesn't mean I get depressed. But that doesn't mean I get depressed thinking about what may go wrong. Says Joel. That could be pessimistic. That would be pessimistic. Oh, so you don't get depressed about that. You're analytical.
Joel, it sounds like you're quite sort of like well considered.
Yeah, an analytical engineering sort of brain, I think, is what's going on there. It would be my guess. I like that, asking what you want. Yes, getting your needs met is important, isn't it? I've not had a poke in the arm and don't watch much of the box, says Claude. 2 years in, I'm still the same and tough as an old goat. Well, I think it's a book in that, isn't it? the old goat memoirs or something like that, and explain your secrets of your success.
Well, I mean, Claude Greengrass. I mean, it's an amazing name.
It is.
I mean, it almost sounds like a a pen name, doesn't it?
Yes, it's
Nom
like
de plumier.
My Life as an Old Goat by Claude Greengrass. I love Colin Firth. Underrated, sexy. Yeah, I can see that. And so does Desiree. We started something here. He's so handsome in the Bridget movies. And he not a good fist fighter, though, in that last scene. Neither of them are they? They didn't look like footy fans, did they? They were just unused to that sort of territory in the snow there. If I've got the movie right, interesting time. They're all the same Richard Curtis movies. Come on. Interesting Times article today. 20 to 30% of critical care beds in England are occupied by COVID patients, and 75% of those have not been vaccinated, according to the latest data up to July this year. That's the thing, isn't it, bidders? Because I think as we scroll down, somebody will present the opposite or a counter article to that. Interestingly, is the glass full or half empty? Either way, more please, says Tom. News is biased towards those who sponsor the what? I don't believe it, Mary. Hi from Gulfport, Florida. I am newly Portugal obsessed. Well, I hope we haven't put you off tonight, Marta. We just have a little bit of a chat about how people's plans might have changed and how we can cope with the changes. But you're very welcome. Lovely to have you along tonight. Chris, Capricorn 12, hola, boa noite. Chris, I am aware that in our Feel Good Friday Love Fest, what was it, the Obrigadojo that we had on Friday? I don't think I acknowledged you, and I want to now. And I meant to send you a text. Thank you so much for your contributions to the show, and you yourself, your lovely self, who we had the pleasure of meeting. You're such a great energy to be around, and we look forward to spending more time with you and Mrs. Capricorn. So right back at you, man, and it's just been lovely getting to know you, and look forward to seeing you again soon. Smiling and nodding like an idiot has always opened way more doors for me than when I open my mouth. Okay, that saves a lot on Portuguese lessons, doesn't it? I'm a smiler, says Capricorn 12. We know that. I'm happy 364 days a year, and then on the 365, I'm happy being unhappy. Would people think I'm strange then? Yes, but probably, you carry on.
Carry on.
You carry on. As a Canadian, my original dream was to move to France. Living in Europe and seeing the news has changed my dream to Portugal. What's wrong with France? Or as Abe Lincoln reportedly said, he didn't. I'd rather keep my mouth closed and let people think I'm an idiot than open it and remove all doubt. Brilliant. Oh, fantastic.
Some great
Suzanne,
comments.
The constantly changing government restrictions that are so disturbing. It's true. They are by definition disturbing, aren't they? I'm not concerned about COVID. I don't expect to be ill. It's like Austria's lockdown, which seems an extreme response. Well, yeah, I think most will be in agreement with that. Sorry, I'm a bit late tonight, says Chris. Slightly irritated about the latest travel update. What is it? You can go to a Christmas party, no testing required, but you have to test like somebody with a substance abuse, I'll say, to get on a plane. I'm not happy about that. Good evening to all. Talking of people with substance abuse. Only kidding. Douglas Hughes, how are you? Great to see you there, mate. All those French lessons, shrug. That's the first lesson in French, isn't it? Is learning how to shrug. Now finish. Next Portuguese. Tomorrow, Suzanne, keep up with your dream. Yes, due to COVID, it took us much more than a year to make our dream happen and move to Lisbon. We did it. Keep the faith and perseverance, like getting a CEF appointment. Yes, indeed. Oh, well done. It was so lovely to hear that as well. Spanish flu, the reaction. For example, if you didn't wear a mask in public, a criminal offence. Then we had swinging 20s. Look at World War II, Korea, and then the 60s, and then the 70s, oil, and the 80s and the 90s. There, in one chat segment, is the history of the of the world since the Spanish flu. Thanks for that, Don. I feel much more educated now. So far, we're not all that locked down here in the UK, says Douglas. So many messages. Some say Omicron is mild. Others more gloomy. Okay, yeah. Depends where you read it and what you read. World War II trivia. Brazilian Expeditionary Force troops embraced the nickname Smoking Cobras. Okay. What does that mean? They were like cobras that smoked? I wonder. When they have announced deaths, they say people who died within 28 days of a positive test. They could also say people who died with grey hair. Yes. Correlation is not causation.
I think that's a very good point.
Unless, of course, they do say that grey hair is a killer. You know, it could be reframed. I can see that on the front of the Daily Mail. Grey hair kills people. And it's like a definite connection's been made. So many deaths of people with grey hair. Maybe the grief is about knowing this is not ending. Well, I think this point was made, wasn't it? And I'm with the Kubler-Ross model that you mentioned there. I'm wondering at what point do we adjust to the chronic nature of this, adapt, and call an end to this crisis? Now that's interesting, isn't it? Is to step out of it being a crisis and embracing it as normality. I don't know if that is what you're saying there exactly, Aviva, but there's something to be said for that, isn't there? Dr. Mick or Mrs.
Well,
M?
don't forget there's two responses to anxiety in terms of a short-term episode of anxiety, extreme anxiety. What are you going to do? You're gonna throw up, aren't you? You're going to be sick. You're going to remove all the contents from your stomach. You're going to it takes the whole body. You're going to go into fight or flight, if that makes sense to most people. Yeah, that's a response to an immediate crisis or immediate concern. So you've got the lion in the room. Literally. We have a completely different response to kind of long-term angst. We tend to do the opposite. We tend to hoard, don't we? We tend to hoard things. We tend to, if you're stressed for a long period of time, you may comfort it. You may actually gain weight. You won't be vomiting. You'll be actually gaining weight. So over time, we've adapted to, as human beings, we've been here for a long time, haven't we? And we've been here before with all this stuff, and we react differently, whether it's a chronic or an acute crisis. Now, this started off as an acute crisis where we were going to flatten the curve within 2 weeks, and now it's a chronic situation. So as human beings, we will change. We will change our responses. We've been here before, and we will adopt different strategies as we go along. Quite frankly.
Yep. Trap that headphone under the Sagresh can if you can again.
I also think.
Sorry.
What I like about what Aviva said there, as a potential strategy for people, is like calling an end to this crisis. Sometimes, like when we're in a state of anxiety, often it's because we're in like 2 minds or 3 minds or 4 minds. Like, like we think this, and at the same time we're thinking that. And then there's this, and then there's that, and there's so much going on that it's really difficult to know your own mind. And so sometimes just making a decision ends the crisis, doesn't it? And you can get some peace with it. And it might not be the right decision, but all of a sudden when you make a decision, it can remove some of the anxiety. And then the next decision is to keep making the best decision you can in each moment.
I've done this. I've done what Aviva's talking about, and realised I am in a chronic relationship with my concerns, and made a conscious decision to say this is now what my life is, and any spikes will be acute. It won't be part of a chronic picture. Any difficulties that need to be challenged with this will be acute events, not part of a dismal, chronic, and depressing and chronic continuum. I think that's a really smart move there, Aviva. About the media in general, I think the problem is not so much the news itself, but rather the opinions of the so-called opinion makers. I can build my own opinion. Thank you very much. I don't need anyone to do it for me.
Yes.
Well said, Joel F. It's like they don't trust you to do it on your own. Here. Go this way with your thoughts. This could work better for our sponsors. The BBC have used language for nearly 100 years. Yes, right from the beginning in dinner jackets at Crystal Palace. They are the world experts in using the English language for messaging. If they meant died of, they would have said died of COVID. Yes, rather than the with. Claude Greengrass, were you on the TV show Heartbeat? We're blessed tonight, aren't we? Claude Greengrass was a character in a TV show Heartbeat.
Right.
So it might not be a real name.
Yes, I'm thinking it's made up.
Look at this. They can't let it go. The ladies cannot let it go tonight. Maybe some fellas too. Colin Firth was very sexy in Pride and Prejudice. It's true. He was, but it's all that restrained. Oh, sorry. Stuff going on. Obligatory World War I trivia. Portuguese grunt Aníbal Milhães was the real-life Rambo. Whoa. Pretty amazing stories about him with his Lewis gun on the Wikipedia. Thank you, Ubi, for that. What an incredible mind Ubi has there. Counting the months until I can move to Portugal. We're ready for you. P.S. I am fully jabbed. But I do agree that people should have a choice. Don't shoot. No, Beard 22. Don't get me wrong, mate. I'm not
We
having
won't
a
be
go.
shooting the messenger at all.
Certainly not.
I think he might be referring to other people.
Okay. Yeah. Don't be jabbing the messenger. There's no need. He's done it already. I've got so used to being in lockdown in 2020. It's still kind of hard to go out and do things. There's another perspective on this, right? I have to work harder to motivate myself. That seems to be part of the grief or change. Interesting.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, and it just what an adjustment. P.S. I love this show. Cheers, DJ. Love you too. I love you all. So much information that we need, and so fun as well. Says Ivy Dawn.
Oh, thank you.
Was it that denial joke? Desiree from DJ. Get out there. So you're being fixed by a man, by the sound of it. Get some rays, vitamin D, and help you stay healthy. Deep breaths. And tune into Expats Portugal every morning. You'll be fine. Actually, that does sound exactly right. Lisa, are there actually lockdowns in Portugal? If not, I hope we can all get out and enjoy all the lights and festivities. No, Lisa M. There is mandatory home working for those who can do it. And
really?
There's
I didn't know
yeah,
that.
yeah. Well, you wouldn't know, would you?
No, because I do work at home.
There's mandatory breathing. Well, we're doing that anyway, a bit like the home working. And kids, there's a delay going back to school for a week or 10 days in the new year as one of those
When's the
kind of
mandatory
fire
home
break
working
things.
from? From
It's
right
already
now?
started,
Oh,
1st
okay.
of December. Yeah, well done for being ahead of the trend there by 5 years. Another word for smoking cobra could be exhaust pipe. Thank you very much, Douglas. Portuguese Red tonight. The smoking cobra nickname story is pretty cool from Ubi and Mary. Queenie too. I mean, I began getting grey hair when I was 7. Really? Queenie too. That's interesting, isn't it? I'm working on it, especially focusing on moving to Portugal now, planning my exploratory trip in March. Enjoying the advice, I think, from DJ there is Desiree. Tried this. First wave of COVID was to kill the bug with isolation. Vaccines out, yet bug persists. People are weird. A universal appeal to killing the bug by not allowing spread, as hard as it is Suze's view on that. What does Taxi think? It is akin to the expression when pigs fly. There was skepticism in the war that Brazil would send troops to the front to fight. Exactly. I don't know if this runs on from the last comment. When we accept the reality we're in, it's amazing how consciousness changes. Yes, acceptance. It will kill a tendency to constantly live in fear, which is useless. I don't know if that was a response to me responding to you there in how I saw what you were saying, Aviva. Me too, thinking about buying a small holding, grow organic veg, have a few animals, and ideally a place with wonderful views, a stream and an orchard on the edge of a village. Well, that was meant to be our future, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And then I've become normal, believe it or not. Isn't that so strange? Claude Greenhead, or Green Grass, I think that's probably... Let's not change it again. Played by the marvellous Bill Maynard. He also played Selwyn Froggatt, of course. Oh, no, it's Selwyn Froggatt. I remember that. By 1943, the popular view became more likely for a snake to smoke a pipe than for the Feb to fight when the snakes smoke when pigs fly. Thank you, Ubi. That's that just about, I think, covers that. There is an old Irish saying, which I will amend a bit. A roof over your head, a few good friends, food in your belly, and the price of a few pints. I think you've shared that with us before, and I'm glad you've shared it again because these basics are so important, aren't they? We're back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs there, aren't we, Doc?
Absolutely. You know, it's really important that you keep those basics. Like we were saying earlier, the friendships and the keeping the basics in place. I would say there was a comment earlier, this thing about consciousness and being in the moment almost, and it reminds me of mindfulness. Mindfulness is an interesting one because on a personal level, mindfulness is great because you can stop in the moment, you can you can move with that moment, and it eradicates. So basically, the mind, if you're not careful, will spend 50% going back into history and finding all the things that you'd like to change, or it will go forward into the future, which it clearly can't do in any practical sense, and mechanically worry about the future. So mindfulness basically says, if you just stop in this moment, you're fine, you're okay, which works on an individual level very well. It's not so hot when it comes to societal changes. Does that make sense? Because if we all constantly live in the moment, we never actually get together and discuss about what's going on in the future. Or So it can inoculate you to stress, but is that a good thing overall? Does that make sense?
It does. It does. It's so interesting in mindfulness. Yeah.
I'm always perplexed by the fact that it's called mindfulness, because the whole purpose of it is to kind of let go of your full mind.
Well, if they called it mindlessness,
it should be called mindlessness.
Yeah, but that would never
I mean, mindfulness is kind of, it's like an oxymoron. Well, it's not an oxymoron. It's just the opposite of what it claims to be.
You just call it being, can't you?
Yeah.
But it's right. It's not very scalable for functional everyday life, in the world.
No, it's not, and it's been around for a long time. I mean, we've had TM, we've had things like transactional. We've had all kinds of versions for a long time. We've had transcendental meditation. That's what I was trying to get to. Or we've had mantras, etc. So it's an old philosophy, and I think it's brilliant. I think it's really good. It's really good.
I'm with you. Yeah.
I've used mantras.
It's great, but what I'm saying to you is, at the same time, we've got to think in terms of a more holistic approach to living within communities. There's got to be different sets of tools for dealing with some of those community stresses, perhaps.
Indeed, well said. And thanks, Carl and Louisa. We are so looking forward to meeting you again too. Your shows are fantastic. Stress is a killer. The NHS should prescribe GMPs. I tell you what,
you don't do it 7 days a week, though, do you?
No, but I would if they paid me as much as they're paying the pharma companies.
Oh yeah, well,
the stress levels would fall to zero. So when the troops actually fought and served, they turned the phrase on its head in a badass sort of way. The Cobras are smoking. I see now. I get it. Okay, we got that. And yeah, just a quick update. Winnie 2's hair went grey when she was 7, and look, still alive. Isn't that great to hear?
Yes, that's good to know. That's good to know. I just wanted to add, one of our very distinguished-looking friends who is completely grey.
Completely.
Yeah, completely grey, and she's.
Well, their hair, or they're completely.
No, it's just the hair. You know what I mean.
It's like the Tin Man from The Wizard of Oz.
No, she's a beautiful woman.
Completely silver.
Grey is so in Grey is so in demand at the moment. She's since this.
Oh yes.
I mean, she's now like not a top model, but she's doing lots and lots of modelling at the moment.
I think she's been snapped up for a Pengarosa, hasn't she?
I think she has,
She's a sexy elder face, isn't she, there?
Yeah.
Great. Capricorn 12, we'll get you autographs soon, don't worry. As I've got older, I've had a big problem with how history is taught about World War II. Yeah, so many nations were involved to a very high extent, but their contributions have been erased. Teach it all and build unity. Could say that about a lot of history, couldn't you? Written by the victors and written for agendas, of course. A good weekend all. Appreciate all the comments as well as the host. Good night. Good night to you. Lots of love to you, Suze and Taxi. Desiree, it seems like a balance to stay in the present and not stress too much, but also don't lose sight of the bigger picture and the things that need to be addressed. Well, what we've got for you, as we'll go out tonight with Terence's podcast, not a single Christmas picture, and I'll keep it that way, and we'll keep those over for Light Up Christmas for the rest of the coming week. Dr. Mick's already got his Christmas tree up behind him there, as you would expect from any upstanding member of Al Viagra. Mindfulness is not passive. It is the ability to become clear, and then one can respond appropriately. Don't get me wrong. I'm not knocking mindfulness at all. I think there are certain, like everything, like all tools, it has its right application, doesn't it? And finally, possibly, on the smoking cobras, it's still apparently a Brazilian expression. Cobra vai fumar, whose English equivalent might be something closer to "things are about to get real." Okay, I'm going to start using it on the breakfast show. It's smoking cobra time. I love mindfulness. You know, I teach what I think is one of the simplest meditation methods ever, and have done for 500 years now. But it's don't get me wrong. I love mindfulness.
In fact, you can check both Carl and I out on the app Insight Timer.
We've
both got meditations, and I got some hypnotherapy bits on there. So
I've had some real flame up reviews, but again, it's the same as the smiling thing. I've got some lovely reviews, but all I can think about is the bad ones. I couldn't do mindfulness. I need to have an eye on the path ahead. I only like nice surprises, not scary ones. Of the blue there.
Can I just quantify? Yes, Carl has had some terrible reviews on his
recording made in San Martino de Porto Bay.
Really?
I think one of my reviews on my meditation.
I think it's because you're kind of like rough and ready, and like Carl has these moments. He thinks, I'm going to record something, and I think a lot of people in the mindfulness community are a bit
Humorless.
Sometimes
Spiritually correct.
can come across a little bit like, you know, mindfulness must
Worthy.
be done this way. And so I think there's sometimes,
Yeah.
it's like you did do one once staring at a goat, didn't you? And you did one inside
There is one on YouTube called The Man Who Meditated with Goats.
Yes, and that's you.
Yes, it is.
So like you've been taking the
it's
mickey out of
extreme
it.
meditation. I do it in places people wouldn't care to.
And I think his gung-ho approach has
down to earth
approach.
Don't like it. They're spiritually correct. Don't like it up them. An Irish guy goes into really, Colin? Okay, let's see. An Irish guy goes into a shop. Could have been any nationality. Into a shop to buy a fly killer. He asked if it was any good for wasps. He said the seller said no, it kills them. Where did that come from? Where did that pesticide racial joke come from? The mind of Rugby Colin. Thank you all. This is my first time joining. It's really fun and interesting.
It's great that you joined
Got everything tonight.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, Lisa, we're going to get, and don't go yet because you'll love Terence's beautifully read podcast. He'll be spitting feathers at his end, thinking, when is he going to play the blooming thing? I'll stay up 2 hours for all of this. I'm going to make biscottis tonight and watch a good movie, possibly. She's in the mood.
Oh my goodness.
She's in the mood for a bit of Colin tonight now. Enjoy tonight. Thanks. Shortens the weekend. Pleasure, Diego. And we'll catch up with all your messages. Thank you so much for those and photos not being ignored. Muito obrigado. A great conversation today. Bonne noite, Cindy B. See you soon. Abel, good evening up in Purple Toys tonight. What?
No Purple Toys.
Can you imagine that? Some ladies, an evening of Colin Firth and Purple Toys. Great night was had by all. Real Portuguese meditate with a live cobra. Smoking the purple cobra. You are right. These times require many approaches. Good evening. Yes. William's just thinking, what's going on? Sorry, just got in. And Claude Greengrass, probably not your real name. We will get through this. Futures
not cast in stone.
Not cast in stone. We can shape our farts.
Fates. Let me do it. We can shape our fates, make the most of what's happening instead of worrying what we can't change, and use these moments instead to be happy. Amen to that.
Amen to that. And this will change your mood again now.
Why don't we play the rest of the comments whilst the podcast is going on?
I'm up to date.
Oh, okay.
I'm up to date. You and Dr. Mick, let me get on with it and read the comments.
Okay.
Dr. Mick Stephenson.
That was the first one I did, by the way.
What's that? The first
all
comment.
night. I let you do them all.
The rest, there are more coming in now. I will put them over the podcast, which I believe is a few minutes long, and it's beautiful. It will just put you in a lovely, relaxed mood, and it will tickle you, and you will love it. It's about why Terence wanted to come to Portugal in the first place, and it will touch a special place in our hearts because I'm sure a lot of people feel the same way. Dr. Mick, thank you so much for being with us for so long tonight. It's been a sport.
Oh, it's been great. I've really enjoyed it.
Will you come back again?
Absolutely. Yeah. Have a lovely weekend and keep on staying optimistic despite all your problems with it.
Despite all the breakdowns that go with it. Cheers, Mick. Lots of love to our back.
Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye for now. So there goes Dr. Mick, and here comes the Terence podcast, and we'll sign off after this. Thank you so much, everybody. Sorry there wasn't any light up Christmas action. We'll carry it forward to next week, and we'll play all your coming comments during the podcast. You're going to love this. Anything else to say, Mrs. M?
No, just enjoy your lives. Well, yes, that is implied. Okay, but stay well. And have a great rest of weekend, and see you real soon.
Bon fin de semana. Ciao.
Ciao.
Lude to Portugal by a tart. Picture a not so Portuguese steely cold November day, full of rain and reflections. I'm in the ancient English city of Worcester, splashing through the medieval side streets, where people are passing by, heavily wrapped in winter garments. As they walk, these bundles intently angle themselves forward to fight the driving wind. The rain is near horizontal, and a gale forces its way past my carefully contrived layers of clothing. Despite this insulation, I feel trickles of icy water shocking my skin. I wipe the rain from my eyes, lick my lips for what seems the 100th time today, and try not to remind myself that they are sorely cracked and chapped. The thought of escaping this meteorologically inflicted torture crosses my mind. Squeezing my sodden and slitted eyes, I scan the vicinity for some kind of respite, a haven to hold up in, while the winter inflicts its worst. My gaze finally fixes on what appears to be a new cafe in town. As the stair rods of rain beat the cobbles, I dance and jump to avoid the deep puddles of overspill, which loiter, waiting to run off into drains. A bell pings as I go inside, and a wave of welcoming heat, sounds of huddled conversation, and a warm light greet my entrance. Not being here before, I take a little time to drip and organize myself to the new surroundings. Stretching before me is a long, cheerfully lit counter with pastries and various savoury fare. To the right are about 6 or 7 tables with what seem to be local immigrant Portuguese farm workers chatting and drinking coffee. I spend a few seconds more to acclimatise, then realise the waiting staff seem Portuguese too. The smell of coffee and cinnamon fill my nostrils. The allure of this aroma takes me to the counter. I am at the point of shivering, but find myself beginning to feel a little more alive, thanks to the warmth and heat of ovens, grills and boilers. My attention is grabbed, and my eye falls upon a collection of small custard-like, ambered-coloured tarts, which seem agreeable. I order one and a coffee with plenty of milk and find a place to sit by the window. I watch the bluish late afternoon light begin to look like night. So I give thanks that I'm comfortable, dry and cloistered, away from it all. I look down at the unfamiliar form of a custard tart in my hand. It warmly reminds me of the ones my nan used to buy me as a kid. Long, long ago in a scullery far, far away, she would deposit 4 or 5 for the family, and I always managed to get a slice of the action. This tart, though, was different. It was lighter, crispier, buttery, and a little smaller. I held it in front of me, analysing it. To be fair, although different, it looked good. I bit it, like a shark, taking half away in one aggressive, decisive chomp. I rolled the bitten part around my mouth a while. A kind of creamy, vanilla-like taste came through, and spicy cinnamon elements started to show themselves. It was a custard, but less gelatinous than the ones Nan supplied. Somehow smoother, somehow more tasty. As I sat there, a lonely figure dressing a cafe window, I had little idea of what had just happened. How could I? How do we ever figure out when passions or fascinations hatch in the depths of the subconscious? I had no idea what had just been formed was a connection with a land of sunshine, light and heat and subtropical verdant greenery. From the depth of a profoundly sullen English winter's afternoon, I wondered about the origins of this pastry. Over 1,600 kilometres to the south, or 1,000 miles in old money, more than 300 years ago, people were delighting and deliberating over the same taste. This natty little custard tart was cooking up its own popularity in a big way then. At the toe end of Western Europe sits the warm and breezy land of Portugal. This place, for centuries, has been the home of the small treat the population call pastel de nata. Its origins are stiff, religious and holy. The stiffness element came in the form of egg whites, because back in the day they were used to starch freshly laundered clothing and religious dress. The byproduct of all this was a surplus of egg yolks. Necessity, being the mother of invention, took a hand, and the monks in the Hieronymus monastery in Lisbon spied an opportunity. They craftily set about using these waste yolks in the production of a secret pastry recipe. The product became known as pastéis de nata, and the income from the sales bolstered financial support for the monastery. The battle to save the building eventually faltered later and it closed in 1834, but the recipe lived on. It was sold to the owners of the Fábrica de Pastéis de Belém, which opened in 1837. Today, this is still the most popular place to buy these treats around the Lisbon area. Known simply as Pastéis de Belém, the shop is a short 3-minute jaunt from the Geronimus Monastery. There's both a takeaway and eat-in service. This is very popular, so remember, if you ever take the fancy to visit, bring a sprinkle of patience with you because there's always a queue stretching out the door. Make no mistake, this little tart is a big tourist attraction. People from all over the world salivate at the sight of a cross between custard tart and a cake. The allure stems from the outside, which is crispy and flaky, while the inside is creamy, soft and sweet. I think the taste is not far from that of a cakey creme brulee. You can find a pastel de nata or two in most cafes up and down the country, and they are available all over Portugal. Each region has its own take on the tart because the original recipe is still kept secret, but this has not stopped these pastries becoming synonymous with Portugal and Portuguese cafe life. There are many times I think back to that cold, rainy November day, especially now when I sit down among the summer throngs in a Portuguese bar or cafe. I still love the little pastry which I quietly consumed long ago in that English medieval city eatery. Back then I didn't realize that in the following months I would be a regular visitor to that Portuguese-owned establishment. Nor did I know how the little tart would light the fire of desire in me to live a very different and eventful future life in my Portuguese place in the sun.